5:45. Good to have you with us. This is the Sunday edition of Newsnight. I'm Gareth Edwards. It sounds like a good idea. It might be improbable. It might be a dream. But imagine working a 4-day week every single week. Well, it could soon become a reality, according to a debate at the recent World Economic Forum in Davos. That's how far this has gone. A longer weekend could have benefits for both employees and employers. But here's the question. Can it work here in South Africa? And I'm joined by somebody a lot smarter than me, industrial psychologist and career coach, Fiona Martin, joining us to talk about this. Hello to you, Fiona. So there's pros and cons. I wish I had a big whiteboard. We can go pros and cons on this one. Which side of the fence do you fall on?
Well, Gareth, I particularly like the sound of working a 4-day week. But I think let's first look at the permutations. What does that actually mean? So the first permutations, which is actually already being adopted in certain countries, is that something they call a compressed work week. So instead of working 5 days a week, you actually work 4 days, but you make up for that day by actually working additional hours. So if, for example, you're working from 8 to 5 daily, the compressed work week would mean you work 4 days, but you basically would work, let's say, from 7 till 6.
So you're still getting your hours.
Absolutely,
in.
yes.
Okay.
So in essence, the employer is not forfeiting any hours from you. It's just that I guess it's a more or less a matter of rearranging them, right? Then there's a second permutation. So you've got companies like Deloitte, Amazon, Google are already adopting it, where employees can opt to work a 4-day week, but at the same time you take you basically earn 75% of your salary. So in essence, you're working less because it's optional, but at the same time, there's a cut in salary because there are other people who then opt to, for example,
so
work
you can earn 100% salary but work more hours 4 days a week, or work less hours 4 days a week and lose 25% of your salary.
Yes, exactly. So that's an option that some people, for example, might want to sort of have. Now, there's a study that's just happened, in New Zealand, a company which is sort of being hailed for having experimented for about 8 weeks with their employees, where for about 6 to 8 weeks, they sort of got in university professors to, to kind of measure, is this going to be successful? So employees were able to work 4 days a week, but get this, they didn't get a cut in salary. So in essence, it was a reduction, but without the cut in the pay. So it's been hailed as success. They basically found there was a reduction in stress. Productivity did not reduce. So it didn't increase either, but it didn't reduce. So in essence, it seems that employees, at the motivation of having the extra day, were able to, with less time, basically produce the same.
So this was perpetual garden.
Yes, exactly.
So that was the research. I remember reading this a little while ago when I brought this up with a few colleagues here at ENC. They jumped at the idea. Well, hang on a minute. It gets a bit more complicated than that. Here's, I think, perhaps where some of this might get a little bit tricky. What about the unions here in South Africa? Because the moment you start taking away a day's work, they would perhaps argue that that then shows that labourers and workers are not necessarily needed 5 days a week. It could put jobs in danger. Is that a fair argument?
Look, as I think with regards to that, so let's look at labour laws in South Africa. In essence, the maximum number of hours a person can work is 45 hours, and then also a maximum of 10 hours in terms of extra time. So if you have a country, or if basically it's adopted where certain professionals can work a 4-day week, because remember, you can't, it doesn't work for all industries and for all professions. So where it's happening in Europe and in America, it only applies to certain industries because it's not applicable across the board. So if there are employees who are working 4 days a week, does that mean then employees who work 5 days a week should be paid overtime for that additional day? So those are some of the conversations, I guess, that need to happen.
Is the research, and I know there's only a few of them doing it, Google, this perpetual guardian over in New Zealand, the Kiwis are doing it, this 4-day work week policy. So you're suggesting you're going to get more out of employees, they're going to work harder. Is that essentially what this comes down to? What then happens as far as business needs are concerned? What if you need what if you need employees 5 days a week? It's not going to work in that case, is it?
That's a very good question. So what some companies have done, so for example, if you need to operate 5 to 7 days, let's say you're in retail, or you've got customers.
24-hour news channel.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. So what happens is where companies who are in that industry have tried to sort of pilot this type of thing, they found that on the days where their permanent employees are off, they then have to get sort of contingent or additional workers on those days, and then in essence costs go up, and then the business case sort of like falls flat. So there are those sort of permutations as well.
So the problem that I saw when I was reading up about this now is, and this is why I was asking Faith the question, I think you saw perhaps when we went to break, is would she like a long weekend? And it's not maybe the right angle to take, but it's not necessarily you get a Friday or a Monday off. The employee or the employer might say, well, no, sorry, you can have a Wednesday off. So you've got this random day off. You still got your 2 days, and you've got this random day
Yes.
off in the middle. So it's not necessarily a long weekend.
Yeah, not necessarily. So some companies who are actually doing this have sort of almost taken a soft approach. So instead of sort of having the whole company shut down from Friday up until Monday, employees get turned. So basically, you know, it's almost like, I guess, doing like shifts. So some employees, so basically you have to work the 4 days a week, but you can, as you said, opt to take the Wednesday off or the Friday off, so that, you know, if you need people there 5 days a week, there is always someone in the office or someone in the department.
I imagine, though, there would be a knock-on effect, perhaps for parents who have, or for people who have children, parents, obviously, because if their children's schooling or perhaps preschool works on an 8 to 5 assumption.
Yes.
Now, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Yes.
they're working longer hours.
Absolutely.
Now there's a family dynamic, and
Yes.
now, so where you might be getting more time on a Friday, you're losing a lot more during the week from the family
Yeah.
time. I imagine as an
Yeah.
industrial psychologist, that plays into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually some of the sort of disadvantages that have been found, that, you know, although you compress your week, those 4 days become actually strenuous, that some employees will then opt to say, you know, I'd rather actually do the 5 days, because trying to compress a 10-hour day is not easy. And particularly, I guess, if you're in an environment where you do a lot of physical activity, or your job is physically demanding. So in that case, there's like risks of injuries. Whereas, I guess, for more knowledge workers in the service industry, it might be feasible, but it's not feasible for all professions. So that's why I think companies generally would pilot it before you sort of, you know, go full force.
Fiona, thank you very much. I think you've given, I think, a lot of viewers something to think about, and perhaps some panic as far as managers around the country are concerned. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so
perhaps we'll do an ENCA poll on this week on this particular question. Fiona Martin, industrial psychologist and career coach from Talent Meridian, I believe, is who you're representing this evening.